right, what in the world is happening with King County real estate? Let's see. You got the last 2 years of sales here. This is supply and demand. Green is the supply, new listings, inventory, number of homes that came to market for sale each month. And the blue is the number that went under contract. Buyers, buying demand, supply and demand. What do we see? October, last green line over here. Look at this. October of 2025, more homes came to market than any of the last 2 years. And buying demand is pretty much the same, a little bit under and way over. This is October 2023, 1,200. Yeah, 1,500. So more buying now than in 2023, more selling now. But the delta, the gap between supply and demand, the biggest it's been in any October. So what does that tell us? Well, that tells us that it is easier to buy than any time in the last 2 years. There's more to choose from. There's less buyers for the listings that are there. This is the trend that we've been seeing all year. You can see the green lines all year over year increasing. That's a slope between here. You can see nice little slope. And buying demand is relatively flat. The peaks are relatively the same. In fact, it's a little bit under. Meaning, if you're selling right now in King County, you have a harder time selling than you have any time in the last 2 years. In fact, if we took this out further than 2 years, let's just go 5 years, and you can see it's going to be the same thing. You're going to see more available inventory and less buying demand than any time in the last 5 years. Exactly. So this October, here we go. There was 1,900. And this October, 2,200. So even in these years where the peaks were higher, the supply right now is higher, and the demand, the blue, way under what it was in 22, 21, and 20, that's when interest rates were under, 4%, 3%. So the increased interest rates have done their job in suppressing demand. That was the point of increasing the interest rates, was to slow the price increases. And they did their job, and they're still doing their job. People have gotten fatigued waiting to sell, so they started to sell, and they are now selling at a faster rate than they have any time in the past 5 years. The October numbers are higher than the October numbers in any of these years. So harder to sell. You're going to need to price it accordingly. You have less demand, easier to buy. So if you're one of those people in the demand category, you have more to choose from, and you have more price options. You'll be able to get a better deal. Predictably, if you notice, every year, October, November, December, is drop off in listings. But there's not, and there's a commensurate drop off in demand. But notice how the demand tends to match the listings. It is not better to sell in the spring. That's madness. No, the demand matches the number of listings. Meaning, if you're waiting to sell, I think you do well to sell now in December, because there will be less competition and, relatively speaking, more buyers for your listing. So don't believe the hype. The spring is not easier to sell. This is not a bad time to be in the market. You just need to price it right, and you need to be ready to go. If you're buying, you should have more, maybe not pick of the litter, because there's going to be less supply coming on. There's going to be less and less to choose from. But those people that are in this massive green swath that have been sitting around the market, they should be ready to deal with you. If you got questions about your particular situation, because everyone's different, every neighborhood's different, every area is different. This goes down. There's no point in looking at national trends or anything like that, because you're not buying a house anywhere in the United States. You're buying a house in a particular city, in a particular neighborhood, on a particular block, and each one has its own unique story to tell. If you need help determining or interpreting that story, that's what I do. Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company over at EXP. Talk to you soon. What in the world is happening with Kitsap County real estate? Well, let's look. This is why I do these for each of the counties, and why I say at the end of every video, if you have specific questions, you should call me, because every case is different. Every neighborhood is different. Every house is different. And in fact, countywide is different. You want to get granular with your selection, but if you just look at the difference between Kitsap and King County, for example, this is a really different graph. What you're looking at is supply and demand for the last 2 years in Kitsap County. Green is the supply, number of listings that came to market. Blue is the demand, number of homes that went under contract. Supply, demand. Look at these last lines here. There's more demand than there were listings. That's unusual. That's not the case in King County. There was less supply than last year. That's also not like King County. Kitsap County has had a run on houses. In fact, there were more buyers than there were new listings. That means more likelihood of bidding wars. That means houses moving off the market quicker. That means if you're selling in Kitsap County, you should have an easier time than if that house were in King County. That means if you're buying in Kitsap County, you're going to need to be pre-approved, ready to move fast, possibly offer over asking, waiving, inspection contingencies, things like that, because there are more buyers than there are new listings. And what's predictable is that there will be less listings in November. Every year, if you just look at the numbers go down. They go down drastically too in November and December, meaning it is if you have a listing and you're looking at selling it in Kitsap, I would put it on in November or December. Why? Because there'll be less competition. The spring is a ridiculous time to wait for. There are more buyers, but proportionately, there are more sellers. You have a harder time. Supply and demand, not just a good idea. It's the law. You've got to dance to what the market is doing. So in Kitsap County, you have a harder time buying. It's going to pay a little bit more. You're going to need to move a little bit faster. And if you're selling, you got a little more leeway. You can probably get a little bit more for your house right now than you could have. Over the summer. Look at the difference. Look at this. People are going to wait till the spring. This is madness. Look at all this competition. This is 560 homes versus 300, not even 283. It's almost twice as much inventory for just a skosh more buyers. 362 homes versus 291. Proportionally, that's insane. You'd be crazy to wait to list your house given these particular set of conditions. But like I said, this is different than King County, and I bet there are neighborhoods and blocks where this isn't the same. So if you're looking to buy or sell in Kitsap County, you should call so we can interpret the data for your specific situation. My name's Aaron Hendon, Christine and Company. I look forward to helping you. Give me a call. What in the world is happening with Pierce County real estate? Check this out. So every one of these videos, I end with the same communication. Your situation is unique. Every house is different. Every neighborhood is different. Every block is different. This is Pierce County. This is an overview. But if you watch the King County or the Kitsap County, you know these are different. There's a different set of supply and demand. This is the supply and demand graph for Pierce County the last 2 years. Green is the supply, the number of homes that were listed to be sold every given month for the last 2 years. Blue is the number that were sold every month for the last 2 years, or at least went under contract. Notice that, first of all, there's more homes for sale now in Pierce County in October than there were in October of last year. So year over year, more supply, meaning you're going to get less and it's going to be harder to sell than last year. Just is. Then October of last year, September, October, way more than October of 2023. Okay. In fact, we're really back in August of 2023. Same number of homes. That's unusual. So lot of available inventory, especially relative to the number of buyers. So the number of buyers here, 882. These are October, 853. So more buyers, slightly more buyers, but way more inventory. That delta between supply and demand is what determines the amount over asking, the number of days on market, the overall price. This is right here is a graph that shows there is more supply than is needed. Not much, it's not a buyer's market per se, but it is certainly closer than it's been any time in the last 2 years. And if I separated this out, if I opened this up for the last 5 years, you'd see the same conversation. This is an easier time to buy, more houses available than any time in the last 5 years, meaning it's a harder time to sell. people say, how's the market? And the answer to that is, it depends. Are you buying, selling, renting, investing? What are you doing? There is no answer called how's the market. There's no, well, what's happening nationally? Who cares? You're not buying a home nationally. You're buying a home here now. You need to know exactly what's happening now. What's happening now is, if you're selling, you need to be really smart about pricing it. And smart about pricing it means you check the neighborhood level of this kind of a graph, because even having just a general view of Pierce County is interesting, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Okay. What's predictable, watch what happens every year. Notice how the green lines go straight down every year at this time. There'll be less and less competition as we enter the end of the year here. Less and less people will be selling, but there'll be a matching decrease. Look at last year. Look how close those numbers are. You would have been better off selling in November than October. You've been better off selling in November or December than any other time in the last in 2024, given the number of buyers relative to the number of new listings. The demand would be higher than the supply in November and December last year. They were. That's not uncommon for this time of year. Now, you may wind up with more sellers than buyers in the end of the year, but it's unlikely. Mostly at the end of the year, you wind up. Now, look, here last year, 2 years ago, this happened. There were more sellers than buyers, but not in December. So the entire myth that it's better to sell in the spring gets exposed in the winter. Look at all this. Look at all this extra inventory. Selling in this is way harder. There's not that many more buyers. There just weren't that many more buyers for all those extra listings. So to recap, if you're looking at selling, this is a really good time. You got to be prepared. You got to be smart, but you can get it done at the end of the year. And if you're looking at buying, you should have the pick of the litter. Any of these people here that didn't sell all that extra inventory, you should be able to make deals on all that. Now, every home is different. Every neighborhood is different. You want to do this intelligently, call me. We can interpret the data for your area and your situation. Let me know what I can do for you. Aaron Hendon at Christine & Company over at EXP. Give me a call. What in the world is happening with Snohomish County real estate? Check this out. All right, you're looking at the supply and demand graph for Snohomish last 2 years. And you can see the green is the supply, number of new listings to market, blue demand, number of homes that came off the market. Now, what does this tell us? Well, there are more available homes than there are buyers. There are more available homes than there were last year at this time. There are more available homes than there were 2 years ago at this time. The buyers, pretty damn close. So what does that tell us? That tells us that there's more supply than demand. Prices are heading down. Easier to buy, harder to sell. That's what this tells us. If you're in the market for a house, you should, in Snohomish, you'll have more to look at than, say, Kitsap County. Go watch the Kitsap County video. You'll see a totally different story. Why? Every house is different. Every neighborhood is different. Every county is different. This is a high-level overview, but your neighborhood could experience a completely different set of information than this, and you're selling in a very specific neighborhood. You're selling in a condition in Snohomish that's like this, but each house is different. So you want to be able to dance with what's actually happening in your area. This is also going to begin to expose, certainly this month, November, is going to show you exactly why it's not better to wait till the spring. Look what happened the last 2 Novembers. There were more buyers than available homes in November and December. If you're selling, that's what you want. You want to put your house on market when there's more buyers than there are homes to buy. You don't want to wait till here when there's way more listings than there are buyers. That's insanity, but that's what passes for common sense, which you and I both know is something of an oxymoron. No one has very few people have common sense, but you do because you're watching me. Congratulations. So what does this mean? It means if you're buying, you should be able to find someone in this set of data that hung on to their house and price too long and they need to sell. You can negotiate. If you're selling, you need to price smart. And I would think about listing in November or December and getting yourself on there when there's going to be less listings and more buyers relative to the number of listings. Sure, number of buyers overall goes down, but it only goes down because less people put their house on the market. You can get it sold in November and December. That's what this is telling us. And if you're buying, I'd find one of those people that was unrealistic and put it on in the summer and they're sitting there 30, 60, 90 days, they need to sell, go find them, or call me and I'll find them for you. That's what I do. Aaron Hendon with Christine Company over at EXP. Look forward to talking to you. What in the world is happening with Vashon Real Estate? Check it out. I love doing the Vashon Real Estate Update because it's always just sort of the opposite of what's happening around it. It's just sort of like this weird little community. Not sort of, it is. I live here. I'm telling you, it's a weird little community. But it's always different than King County, which makes no sense. And it's different than King and Kitsap because it's Pierce. It's always interesting. What you're looking at here is the supply and demand graph of the last 2 years. Supply, number of new listings, number of houses that came to market to be sold. Blue is the demand, number of ones that went under contract. Okay. Hey, so let's look at this. You can see here at the end, there were more homes sold than went to market. Why? Well, who knows why? Why is that such a crazy question? You never know. Really, all the answers for why are always hindsight answers. Like 2 years from now, we'll determine why. Doesn't matter why. What's so is there were less listings than there were buyers. There were a bunch of homes there at the end of the month there that got sucked up right away. So what does this actually mean? Well, it's not a ton of data. I mean, we're talking about 10 houses kind of thing. It's not a lot, but like last October, there were more houses than last October, more houses than November. Yeah. Less houses than 2023. So it's a little hard to tell what's going to happen in the future here. It's always hard to tell the future, but what this is if you listed your house in October, you had an easier time to sell than you did any other time this year. It's the only month this year where buyers outpaced listings. There's still a lot of listings available on the island. Like these are huge numbers for Vashon. Lot of excess inventory on Vashon. In fact, if we looked at the available homes on Vashon right now, let me just show you what I'm talking about. We'll just do a quick search here. Active, that's for sale on Vashon. There are 29 homes available. That's a lot of freaking homes available on Vashon. There's not, historically, over the last 5 years, that's about as many as we have. This is a really easy market to buy in, relatively speaking. Okay. Now, price-wise, you would need to deal with what your budget is, but you can see that most of these houses fall, you got a good swath under $1 million and really almost all under 2 million. Virtually all of them under 2 million, most of them under 1.5. So you got a lot to choose from, right? Some, under 8, bunch under 8. Point is, easiest time to buy in the last 10 years. In fact, if we go back to the stats, not really what I wanted. That was dumb. Let's go back here. Let's just look at these again. Let's look at the last 10 years of data for months of inventory, not months of inventory. Let's see what that shows us. Just months of inventory by month. You'll see what 2025 looked like. Months of inventory means if no new homes came to market, how many months would it take to sell every available home on Vashon? Oh, I didn't put in the Vashon number here. Sorry. Stop. Let's just go back here. 10 years, months of inventory, group by month, put in the Vashon number. Whoops. Let me show you. See how high this is, right? 2023, ton of available inventory. But overall, right, you haven't seen months of inventory. Look how low it's been. 2022, right during the pandemic, almost nothing available. Then after the pandemic, a ton. See how that's really is trending up, right? In fact, if we smooth that out over the last 10 years, can't group it by anything other than month. Okay, fine. You got a couple of peaks, but we're just coming off a peak here in 2025, a pretty high peak. And overall, that number is trending up. End of the year, always a little harder to buy just because there's less homes coming to market. But of these 29 homes that we saw, a lot of these are really just sitting. Let's look at this again. If you're looking to buy on Vashon, you can see, look at the days on market, right? That's a rental. Forget about that one. But 49, 55, 143, 153, 132, 170, 102. You think some of those guys might be ready for a price drop? 48, 53, 77, 166, 41. A ton of inventory has been sitting here for that entire summer. So there's a lot to choose from, and some of those buyers may be ready for price drops. So depending on where you're at in terms of your price point, you can find some deals here on the island. If you're looking to sell, it's been a pretty good time. October was a pretty good month for you to sell in, and it's predictable that November and December will be a good time too, because there'll be less people selling and not there'll be less people selling and a consistent number of people buying. There were more buyers than sellers in October. That's unlikely to, you could predict that might be the case. So new listings, you should be able to get that sold. Old listings, you better be ready to make a deal, because there's going to be, you should be able to get a deal if you're a buyer there. Anyway, that's the situation. Now, every price point's a little different. Every area on the island's a little bit different. Tahlequah is different than the North End, things like that. And every house is pretty unique. So you want to be able to walk that walk. That's what I do. I live here. I'm happy to help you with any of that. Aaron Hendon at Christine & Company over at eXp Realty. Let me know what I can do for you. Party on, Wayne.